Hello, welcome back. This is Roger Royce. I am the host of the 10,000 Startups podcast and a partner with Haynes Boone and Palo Alto doing emerging growth and venture capital. Today, I want to talk just a little bit about the California 2026 Billionaire Tax Act, which you may have been hearing about in the papers. There have been some pretty well publicized moves that some famous people in Silicon Valley have made out of state. And of course, a lot of people are blaming this proposed tax bill on those moves. So let me put a couple of slides up and make this a little easier to follow. I'm not gonna get deep in the weeds on this, but I do want to hit the high points. First of all, if you haven't heard about this, this is a proposed one-time 5% wealth tax on individuals of more than $1 billion of net worth. And the idea is that Medi-Cal here in California is projected to lose some federal funding, and we need to make up the difference. And this is a proposal to make up that difference. It would be a ballot initiative. We have this weird thing in California where if our legislature doesn't act, people can get enough signatures, they can put a proposal on the ballot, and if it gets more than a majority, 50% plus one votes, then it becomes law. And there's not a darn thing the legislature or the governor can do about it. So if this gets enough signatures, 874,000, it will be on the ballot and be up for a vote. So this might sound like no way, there's no chance, but I'm not so sure. Certainly a lot of smart people are awfully worried about this. The tax is retroactive. It applies to any residents who have been billionaires as of January 2026, with the payment due in 2027. It could be payable in installments. So the tax rate, as I said, it's 5% of net worth. Net worth is kind of a sneaky number, and I'm going to get into that. Well, let's get into it right now. The bill itself says that, there's about 200 billionaires in the state, and it leads you to believe that's all the people it would affect. I actually think that it will affect a lot more than that because of the way it defines net worth. And a lot of people who do not consider themselves billionaires may find out that for purposes of this bill that they are billionaires. It includes at fair market value, another area that we can all disagree on, stock and equity interest that makes sense, privately held businesses, partnerships, and trust assets attributable to the taxpayer. This is significant. This is the sleeper. This is the thing that's going to drag people into this tax that didn't think they were going to be in the tax. Typically, you put assets in a trust, you feel like you've given them away. Well, not so fast if this net worth tax becomes law. Excluded, oddly enough, real estate held directly, so not held through an entity. So this, if it passes, this is going to maybe incentivize some folks to do some reverse planning. So all those beautiful LLCs I set up for personal asset real estate over the years, we may be taken apart. Retirement accounts, some personal property located out of state. So you might see our private jet owners flying, taking Amtrak to Reno to pick up their jet to fly wherever they're going. The valuation rules are strict and they are complex. Everything about this is complex and confusing, but the valuation rules in particular, again, some of this is surprising and a little counterintuitive. Won't get discounts like we typically do in valuations. The assessment is based on voting control, not economic value. So if you own 100% or 90% of the vote of a company, but only 10% of its stock, which is sometimes done, well, if you own 10% of the equity, but 90% of the vote, for purposes of valuation, you own 90%. Shareholder rights plans, some of them are being ignored. So a lot of the planning that we do. And interestingly, the value is not less than insurance value. And a lot of these high-end assets tend to be, they overestimate the amount of insurance coverage. So there's another thing that'll change possibly if this becomes law. Now, interestingly, is the treatment of trusts, because, like I said, there's a real sleeper in here, and that's the fact that the assets of a grantor trust is included. Separately, assets of any trust distributable to beneficiaries are included. And there are some complex elections you can make to get out of double taxation. But I think this grantor trust asset inclusion is really going to surprise a lot of people, and who may not have seen this coming, and you better start planning to get some liquidity here fairly soon. Now, this bill is supported by a couple of unions, as you might expect, because it is there to fund Medi-Cal. It's also supported by U.S. Representative Ro Khanna, but its opponents include Governor Gavin Newsom and also the California Chamber of Commerce. So we'll see what happens. This is not the first time a state has proposed changing the laws in a way that was in opposition to our congressional delegation. And this is one where the congressional delegation supports the proposed change, but our governor and the California Chamber do not. So stay tuned. Like I say, you might otherwise think that a bill like this would have no chance. But keep in mind, it's a ballot initiative, and weird things can happen in California because of our initiative process. The other thing I would leave you with is that I'll just be honest, it's a confusing thing to read. It's a confusing bill. It's contradictory in some places. And I know it's complex and confusing because if you try to get AI to interpret it for you, different AIs, different large language models are going to give you different summaries and different answers. So I think we kind of have to maybe spend a little more time in the weeds on this, and I'll do that possibly in later podcasts if this thing gets any steam. But for now, just know that this is something that is out there waiting in the wings. It's Roger Royce 10,000 started this podcast. Thanks for listening.